a peaceful African village, nestled between rolling hills and wide grasslands, life moved to the rhythm of nature. Tall baobab and marula trees stood proudly, providing shade and fruit to the villagers. Colourful huts with thatched roofs dotted the landscape, surrounded by neatly swept courtyards and small vegetable gardens. The air was filled with the scent of wildflowers and the earthy aroma of fresh rain after a storm. Cattle grazed in the open fields, their gentle bells clanging softly as herdsmen guided them. Women wrapped in vibrant patterned cloths balanced clay pots on their heads, returning from the river with fresh water. Children ran barefoot through the village paths, their laughter echoing as they played games or chased after goats. Every morning, the village woke to the sound of roosters crowing and the rhythmic pounding of maize in wooden mortars. The community was close-knit, where everyone knew each other by name and shared joys and sorrows like one big family. Evenings were magical, as elders gathered around crackling fires to tell stories under a sky blanketed with stars, passing wisdom from one generation to the next. Life in this village was simple but beautiful, shaped by tradition, nature, and a deep sense of community. It was here, in this vibrant and lively place, that Nandi's story began. A story of courage, resilience, and hope in the face of hardship. As time passed, life became harder for Nandi in the village. Her stepmother, Kezia, never seemed pleased with anything she did. Even though Nandi woke up before sunrise to fetch water from the river, sweep the yard and cook meals, Kezia always found something to complain about. "You're too slow. You're lazy," Kezia would shout, even when Nandi's hands were sore from scrubbing pots or her feet ached from long walks to gather firewood. Nandi wanted nothing more than to make Kezia happy. She hoped that if she worked hard enough, Kezia would one day love her like a real daughter. But no matter how much Nandi tried, Kezia remained cold and bitter. If Nandi spoke politely, Kezia claimed she was being disrespectful. If she stayed quiet, Kezia accused her of sulking. It was like walking on thorns, every step hurt, and nothing was ever right. Still, Nandi held on to hope. "One day she will see my heart," Nandi often told herself quietly. Despite the hostility, Nandi continued to show kindness and respect, believing that patience and goodness were stronger than anger. But deep inside, she wondered how long she could keep trying when every effort was met with hostility and blame. Life in Nandi's home became more unfair each day. Kezia made sure Nandi did every single chore in the house. From dawn to dusk, Nandi swept the yard, washed clothes, cooked meals, and cleaned dishes. Her hands were rough from scrubbing pots, and her back often ached from carrying heavy buckets of water. But no matter how hard she worked, Kezia was never satisfied. While Nandi worked tirelessly, Kezia treated her own daughter, Lethabo, like a princess. Lethabo never lifted a finger to help. She wore beautiful clothes, ate the best food, and spent her days playing or chatting with friends. Whenever Kezia saw Nandi resting, even for a moment, she would yell, "Why are you sitting there doing nothing? Get back to work." But when Lethabo lounged in the shade, Kezia would smile proudly and say, "My darling deserves to rest." Despite the unfair treatment, Nandi remained patient. She never spoke back or disrespected Kezia, even when her heart ached with sadness. Deep down, Nandi believed that kindness and respect were her greatest strengths. "I will keep doing my best," she whispered to herself, "because I know my worth, even if Kezia doesn't see it." Her gentle spirit remained unbroken, even under the weight of injustice. Nandi's father, Mfile, was a hard-working man. He ran a successful trading business and often had to travel to distant towns and cities to buy and sell goods. He loved Nandi dearly and always promised to take care of her. "Be strong, my little star," he would say before leaving. "I will be back soon." But his trips were long, and sometimes weeks or even months would pass before he returned home. When Mfile was away, life became even harder for Nandi. Without her father around, Kezia's behavior grew harsher. She yelled at Nandi for the smallest things and made her do extra chores. "Your father isn't here to spoil you," Kezia sneered. "This house won't clean itself." If Nandi tried to explain or defend herself, Kezia would only grow angrier. Nandi missed her father terribly. She longed for the days when he would sit with her under the big tree in their yard, telling her stories of his travels and laughing together. When Mfile was home, Kezia acted kinder, pretending to care for Nandi. But as soon as he left, the kindness disappeared like smoke in the wind. Even though Nandi felt lonely, she stayed strong. She told herself that her father would return soon, and everything would get better. "I just have to hold on," she whispered to herself at night, staring at the stars and finding comfort in their quiet, steady light. One afternoon, the sun was shining brightly over the village, and a cool breeze carried the sweet scent of flowers. Nandi was busy sweeping the yard when she heard the sound of laughter coming from inside the house. Lethabo, as usual, was playing without a care in the world. She had taken out a beautiful family heirloom, a golden vase that had belonged to Mfile's ancestors for generations. It stood proudly on a high shelf, and everyone in the family knew how precious it was. Lethabo, eager to show off, grabbed the vase and spun around carelessly. "Look, Mama! Isn't it beautiful?" she called out. But before Kezia could respond, Lethabo tripped over a mat. The vase slipped from her hands and crashed to the floor, shattering into countless pieces. Silence filled the room as Kezia's eyes widened in shock. Instead of blaming her own daughter, Kezia's face twisted with anger. "Nandi!" she screamed, her voice sharp and accusing. Nandi, who had just walked into the house, froze in confusion. "You clumsy girl, look what you've done." "But I didn't touch it," Nandi said softly, her voice trembling. "Don't lie to me," Kezia snapped. "You're always ruining things." Without listening to Nandi's pleas, Kezia grabbed her arm and dragged her to the small dark storeroom at the back of the house. "You will stay here tonight," Kezia declared. "Maybe this will teach you to be careful." The door slammed shut, leaving Nandi alone in the darkness. She sat on the cold floor, tears streaming down her face. The air was thick and stuffy, and fear crept into her heart. But even in that moment of sadness, Nandi tried to stay strong. "I know the truth," she whispered to herself. "One day, someone will see it too." The night was cold and dark. As Nandi sat alone in the small, dusty storeroom, the air smelled of old wood and forgotten things. Her heart ached with sadness and unfairness. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, trying to be strong even though her body felt weak. "Why does Kezia hate me so much?" she whispered to herself. "I didn't break the vase, but no one listens to me." As her eyes adjusted to the dim light coming through a crack in the door, Nandi noticed something unusual. In the corner of the room, half hidden under an old blanket, was a small wooden box. Curious, Nandi crawled over and gently lifted the box. It was covered in dust and its hinges were rusty. With trembling hands, she opened the box. Inside were neatly folded letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. The paper was yellowed with age, but Nandi could still see the beautiful handwriting on each page. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized who had written them, her late mother. Nandi's fingers shook as she unfolded the first letter. "My dearest Nandi," it began. Tears welled up in her eyes as she read her mother's words, filled with love, wisdom, and stories of hope. The letters spoke of how her mother had helped build Mfile's business and supported him through every challenge. Her mother's strength and love shone through each word. As Nandi read more, she felt a strange warmth fill her heart. The letters were not just words, they were a reminder that she came from a line of strong, brave women. "Mama, you were so wonderful," Nandi whispered softly. "I will be strong, just like you." That night, locked away in the storeroom, Nandi found something far more valuable than freedom. She found the truth about her mother's sacrifices and a renewed strength to face whatever came next. As Nandi continued to read her mother's letters, she learned something that completely changed how she saw her family. The letters told stories of how Nandi's mother had worked side by side with Mfile, helping him build his business from the ground up. She had been there during the hard times, helping him make tough decisions and managing the work when things were slow. It was her clever ideas and strong heart that had helped Mfile succeed. One letter spoke of how Nandi's mother had travelled with Mfile to faraway places, learning new ways to trade and bring goods back to their village. Another letter shared how she had supported Mfile when he was overwhelmed, always pushing him to keep going. Nandi's mother had played a key role in making Mfile's business successful, but no one ever spoke about it. As Nandi read on, a strange feeling washed over her. She understood now why Kezia had treated her so harshly. Kezia's bitterness wasn't about Nandi, but about the memories of Mfile's late wife. The jealousy Kezia felt came from the fear that she could never measure up to the woman who had helped build Mfile's life. Kezia wasn't just angry at Nandi for being a reminder of her mother. She was angry at herself for feeling small next to a woman she could never replace. Nandi's heart ached as she realized the truth. Kezia's cruelty came from her own deep insecurity and fear. She had built walls around herself, and those walls had kept her from ever truly loving Nandi. But now, with the letters in her hands, Nandi understood her stepmother's pain, even if it didn't excuse her behavior. One day, just as Nandi was finishing her chores, she heard the sound of horses approaching the house. Her heart raced with excitement and hope. Could it be? Was it her father, Mfile, returning early from his business trip? Nandi rushed to the door, her heart lifting as she saw Mfile stepping down from his horse with a smile on his face. "I'm home, Nandi," Mfile said, his warm voice making her feel safe. But as he looked around the house, he noticed something was off. The air felt tense, and Nandi's eyes were red from crying. His gaze fell on Kezia, who quickly tried to act normal, but there was a nervousness in her eyes that Mfile didn't miss. Before Mfile could say anything, Nandi stepped forward, holding the small wooden box she had found in the storeroom. With trembling hands, she opened it and showed her father the letters. "Papa, these are from Mama," she said softly. "They tell the story of how she helped you build everything we have today." Mfile took the letters in his hands, his face a mix of surprise and emotion as he read the words his late wife had written. Nandi watched as his eyes filled with tears. "I never knew," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Your mother did so much for me, for our family. I never realized how much she sacrificed." Nandi's heart felt heavy, but also lighter at the same time. She had finally told her father the truth about her mother's hard work and love, but there was still something more. Mfile looked up at Kezia, his face serious now. "Kezia," he said, his voice firm but calm. "I've seen how you've treated Nandi. I trusted you to care for her, but instead, you've been cruel to her. Why?" Kezia's face turned pale, and for a moment, she seemed lost for words. But then, the bitterness in her eyes began to show. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "I've always felt like I'm living in the shadow of your first wife. She was everything I could never be." Mfile's expression softened, but his disappointment was clear. "Kezia, I married you because I wanted to build a life together, not live in the past. Your jealousy and bitterness have hurt Nandi and our family. This has to stop." With the truth finally out in the open, Mfile demanded that Kezia change her ways or leave the household. He made it clear that he would not tolerate the mistreatment of his daughter any longer. Kezia, deeply ashamed, realized the consequences of her action. She was forced to confront the bitterness that had controlled her for so long and the pain she had caused Nandi. The atmosphere in the house was thick with tension as Mfile stood, holding the letters in his hands. He had learned the truth about Nandi's mother and the pain Kezia had caused. He looked at Kezia with a serious expression, his voice steady but firm. "Kezia, I love you, but I will not allow this cruelty to continue. You have hurt my daughter, and that is something I cannot ignore. You must change your behavior, or you will leave this house." Kezia's face turned pale as she heard the words. She had never imagined Mfile would speak to her like this. All the anger, jealousy, and bitterness that had built up over the years came crashing down on her. She had always been afraid of being compared to Mfile's first wife, but now she saw how her actions had hurt everyone, especially Nandi. Tears welled up in Kezia's eyes as she fell to her knees. "I am so sorry, Mfile," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I was wrong. I let my own fears and insecurities control me, and I took it out on Nandi. I never meant to hurt her. I was just so scared of never being good enough." Nandi watched silently, her heart a mixture of sadness and hope. She had always wanted Kezia to see her as a daughter, to love her the way she had hoped for, but now, with Kezia's apology, things felt different. She had waited for so long to hear these words, and now that they were finally here, she wasn't sure what to feel. Mephiles stepped closer to Kezia, gently lifting her up. "It's not too late to make things right, Kezia," he said softly. "We can heal, but it will take time, honesty, and effort. I want us to be a family, truly. Can you try for Nandi's sake? For all of us?" Kezia nodded, her face filled with shame but also a new understanding. "I will try," she said, her voice full of regret. "I will do whatever it takes to make up for my mistakes." From that day on, things began to change. Kezia started to treat Nandi with more kindness, slowly letting go of the bitterness that had consumed her. It wasn't perfect, and it took time. But Nandi could see the effort Kezia was making. There were still moments when things felt difficult, but Nandi finally felt like she was being seen and heard. The house, once filled with tension and hostility, began to feel warmer. Slowly but surely, Nandi, Kezia, and Mephiles started to rebuild their family, with a new sense of understanding, love, and respect. It wasn't an easy journey, but it was the beginning of a new chapter for them all. As the days passed, Nandi slowly began to feel a change in her heart. Kezia was trying, and that meant something. The apology and Mephiles' strong words had made Kezia realize how much damage her bitterness had caused. Nandi knew that healing didn't happen overnight, but she could see that Kezia was genuinely trying to become a better person. One evening, after dinner, Nandi quietly approached Kezia, who was sitting by the fire, looking thoughtful. "Kezia," Nandi said softly, her voice steady. "I forgive you." Kezia looked up, her eyes filled with surprise and relief. "You do?" she asked, her voice trembling. Nandi nodded. "Yes. I know it's not easy, but I can see that you are trying, and I'm willing to try too. But then," Nandi added something important, "but there are things I need from you. I need respect, kindness, and fairness. I need you to treat me like I matter, not just as someone to order around. I want us to build a real family, but it's going to take both of us." Kezia's face softened as she listened. She had hurt Nandi for so long, and she understood now that love couldn't grow without trust and respect. "I will do better," Kezia promised. "I know I've made many mistakes, but I will work hard to make things right." From that moment on, Nandi's life began to change. She no longer had to do all the chores alone. Kezia started to share the work with her, and even took the time to teach her how to cook some of her favorite dishes. The house became a place of laughter and shared moments, and slowly, Nandi started to feel like she truly belonged. Mephiles too noticed the change. He praised Nandi for her strength and kindness, and he worked hard to support both her and Kezia as they learned how to be a family. "You are my heart, Nandi," he would say, hugging her tight. Nandi knew that forgiveness was a journey, but she had learned something important. She didn't have to accept mistreatment to be kind. By standing up for herself and setting boundaries, she had helped bring the family back together. The healing process wasn't quick, and there were still moments of tension, but the family was finally on the right path. Nandi had found the respect and love she deserved, and she knew that no matter what happened, she was strong enough to face the future with hope. Together, they were ready for a new beginning. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more inspiring content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts below. We'd love to hear from you. Stay tuned for more stories filled with lessons, hope, and heart.